Hey everyone. I haven't had an opportunity to talk about it yet, but this new trailer for Final Fantasy XVI has me excited for the next game in the series. In this video, I will be breaking down the reveal trailer for Final Fantasy XVI. Most of what I will discuss is purely speculation, so take that for what it's worth. But, having played most Final Fantasy games, I will share what I know. Be sure to pay attention to some of my details, as they can appear disconnected at times, but I will try to keep this as coherent as possible. Alright, now let's start analyzing. At the beginning of the trailer, we see our protagonist staring into a fire, which alludes to the loss of Joshua, the previous dominant of the fire crystal. The word dominant seems to be the moniker for summoner in this game. If we break down the word dominant to its Latin roots, we get the word dominus, which means lord. This word could have a duality of meaning. Dominants seem to not only have dominance over their summons, but also a royal bloodline. YouTube creator Soldier First Class has theorized that the girl in these scenes could be the dominant of Shiva, and I will link his video so that you can see some of the other interesting theories that he has crafted. But in this scene, we can see Joshua spending time with this girl, playing and laughing. She is well dressed and wears jewelry. What's more is that she seems to be allowed to be around Joshua, who is royal. From what I know about feudalism, lords and ladies tend to stick to their own. So, we can effectively establish that this young lady is indeed royalty, and by extrapolating the word dominant, she may also have some sort of royal bloodline that allows her to have dominion over summoning Shiva. The protagonist sits around a fire with a band of branded assassins, all with the goal in mind of targeting Shiva's dominant. There are two things that I take away from this scene. The first is the tattoo of a sword crossing a shield. This tattoo is placed on the left cheek of each assassin's face and signifies subservience to someone or something greater. It is a mark that cannot be unnoticed, displayed for everyone to see. This tells me that it is a mark of shame, perhaps from the protagonist not being able to be the sworn shield he pledged to be for Joshua, like we see at the end of the trailer. The leader of the band of the assassins remarks that it is not the place of these marked soldiers to question their orders, but to instead follow them. The lack of control over one's situation is a common theme in most Final Fantasy games. What this reminds me of most, oddly enough, is Final Fantasy XIII. The mark of the l'Cie. L'Cie are branded by the fal'Cie as a mark of subservience, or else they face the consequence of turning into monsters. I'm not saying this will happen to our protagonist, but he doesn't look like he's in a position to stray away from the task given to him. I don't think this party will play much importance later in the game, and I could be wrong, but one of them dies early on in the trailer, courtesy of one of Titan's boulders, so they seem like a mid-game supporting cast at best. In the next scene, we see a battle on the backs of chocobos. The opposing army has brutish men who can knock soldiers off of their chocobos, and we even see one of these brutes with a tattoo on his right forearm, which could signify an opposing faction tasked with a similar goal like our protagonist's group. The summons in this game are called icons. The English word icon is usually an image that conveys religious or cultural meaning. Lots of things can be icons, from a picture of a religious figure to a royal family crest. This further signifies the idea that icons appear to be closely related to families of nobility within this universe. This word also sheds some light for me on one of the best summoners, in my opinion, from the Final Fantasy series. As the battle rages, the two icons, Shiva and Titan, appear and begin to fight one another. Each opposing army controls an icon, and the icons battle each other. So we have to presume that two royal armies are engaged in battle. What strikes me the most about this scene is the beginning of it. The protagonist's group states that they have summoned their icon, which implies that the group is fighting for neither army, but rather the interests of whomever they serve. We next get some background discussion about the relinquishing of a mother crystal from a foe, presumably Shiva's dominant. Based on this conversation with this lady, the crystals seem to impart protection from the blight, and this carries some heavy motifs from previous Final Fantasy games. Crystals have always kept the world in balance. Degradation or destruction of a crystal brings chaos in the element residing within that crystal. In this case, the lack of a blessing from a mother crystal implies the impending doom of blight. My guess is that the blight brings about the monsters that you see in this battle scene, similar to how the mist from the Aoife tree brought fiends with it in Final Fantasy IX. On a side note, I don't think the main character will be fighting a Malboro alone, due to the traditional difficulty of this particular enemy. I think that this scene was shown for tech demo purposes. Here's hoping that we get another battle system like FF7 Remake. Now you will want to pay close attention to this next detail. We also see a scene where Joshua heals the main character's wound. The Final Fantasy series has never been one to shy away from religious themes. The name Joshua gets its roots from the name Jesus. It is fitting that Joshua is capable of summoning the Phoenix icon as well as healing, because the Bible teaches that Jesus rose from the dead and was capable of healing others, just like the mythical powers within a phoenix. Furthermore, once risen from the dead, Jesus also imbued his apostles with the Holy Spirit in the form of flaming tongues, so that they could fulfill his holy message. We can see from some of these battle scenes that the main character is able to channel the Phoenix icon into his attacks, and this allows him to strike with as well as use fire magic. In this next scene, we see an Imperial Dragoon using jump against our protagonist. The ever-present Empire is a theme we see in many of the recent Final Fantasies that was most notable in Final Fantasy VI. Curiously enough, this Dragoon's helmet looks similar to the design of the Imperial Judges from Final Fantasy XII. We next see the protagonist using what looks like more summoning powers from the likes of the icons Garuda and Titan, while fighting more Imperial soldiers. Joshua could be the origin of how our protagonist is able to source power from these additional icons, but we will need more details in order to determine if this is the case. Hidden between battle scenes, we see what appears to be someone close to Joshua, possibly his father, murdered right in front of our young lord. This may seem trivial, but this is where I will take full interpretive liberty. This murder sparks a reaction inside of Joshua, causing him to summon the Phoenix. After this, we see a humanoid dark figure that summons a pillar of fire, bringing about the advent of Ifrit. The term Ifrit is actually derived from Arabic. In the Quran, Ifrit were the most powerful of jinn. Jinn are considered supernatural beings. They're basically the Quran's version of angels. If you have a Christian background like me, I think you can see where this is going. Ifrit are demons or fallen angels. The most famous of all Ifrit was Iblis. Christians know this figure to be Lucifer, or Satan. Satan is known to be the opposing force to Jesus. Some legends suggest that Ifrit have been known to adopt a human form, and, when they do, they appear as people turned black by the fire that consumes them. Further research suggests that Ifrit can originate from smokeless fires, or even the blood of murder victims. Dissecting this research further reveals that Ifrit are drawn to the blood of murder victims rather than created from it. These Ifrit are supposedly able to gain power from the spirit or the blood of murder victims, and are often driven to do the will of those who were murdered. Because of this, these legends often tell of how an Ifrit was driven to seek revenge against the murder of the victim whose soul they drew power from. Also important to note, however, that even an enslaved Ifrit is still incredibly sly and cunning. If an Ifrit were enslaved or bound to an object against their will, they would often use the wording of their master's wish against them. Instead of granting wishes that honored the intentions of their masters, they would grant wishes that followed the exact wording of the desire implored to them. In this way, they were still able to undermine their master's power and exact revenge against those who tried to harness their power without consent. So what's the takeaway? Well, I have a possible theory that originates from a previous game in the Final Fantasy franchise. This theory presupposes that Ifrit is a malevolent spirit or dark side of the same fire crystal. The theory comes from Final Fantasy V. In this game, evil magic creates the void, which is a nothingness that threatens to consume all existence. To prevent this, the world is split into two separate worlds by separating each elemental crystal into two sets. This caused the original world of FF5 to split into two. Perhaps the blight from Final Fantasy XVI is like the void, trying to consume all life unless it can be stopped by our protagonist. During the meeting of alliances in the trailer, it is stated that the fire crystal has lost its blessing. This would be problematic, as the blight would cause the mother crystals to lose their ability to protect the people of their kingdoms. Maybe the loss of the blessing of the mother crystal causes Joshua to be vulnerable if blood is spilled on him, which then causes the dark side of the crystal to reign and bring forth the blight mentioned in the trailer. The game's logo supports this theory, as every mainline game's logo usually contains an image that is relevant to the plot of that particular Final Fantasy. This is why the knight in this scene is shocked to discover a second fire icon. This could also explain why, in an earlier scene, Joshua's mother insists that Joshua stay inside, protected from all harm. She may have been trying to protect him from the danger of a blight-infested mother crystal. Of course, this is all purely speculation, and it is simply meant to get the gears turning in your head about all of the potential that this game has. I will continue to keep an eye out for any new Final Fantasy information to further theory craft. But let me know what you think. Did you like the video? If so, what did you like? And if you dislike this video, what do you dislike about it? What sort of theories do you have about the newest Final Fantasy game? I would love to hear your thoughts. And if you want to see more content like this, Be sure to subscribe to my channel for more videos. Cheers.